to be on stage at this great event. My name is Jesse Fenty. I'm an intellectual property attorney based in Washington, D.C. I'm barred in Virginia and D.C. Went to Howard University, graduated in the 90s, 1996, with a degree in electrical engineering. Worked at the patent office as a patent examiner. Went to law school while I was there. I've been doing patent law for about 15 years, different firms in D.C. and Virginia. So I specialize in patent law, trademark law, getting into the NFT blockchain space. So one thing I had this comment that I've been thinking about all week, 2 weeks, about blockchain and crypto and people making money in this space. And it kind of dovetails off what the previous speaker was talking about well, it kind of comes down to where you spend your money. I mean, to me, this is a black empowerment conference. This is a black business conference. And so what concerns me is where we spend our money. And that's what the previous speaker was talking about. And so she said she didn't mind if she went to Walmart or something like that. But we got to have our own businesses. We got to have we got to support our own businesses. In D.C., I live in D.C. I mean, we've been gentrified out of D.C. We don't own, not that we ever owned D.C., we had majority of people, And so lately in the last week, I've been shopping only at black restaurants, only at black stores. I'm making a point because the whites, the people who have come to D.C., they didn't come to D.C. to integrate. They came to set up their own little dog parks and their own restaurants and their own stores. So this is business. This is war. This is serious. And so this is something I think about all the time. So I mean, there's no major black-owned grocery store in D.C. So this money that we're making, what are we going to spend it on? So I'm happy to talk about intellectual property because even the people who were presenting the pitch competitions, I was looking at my phone, I was looking up trademarks and patents so I can look up. So some people had trademarks, some people didn't. So this is about property ownership, it's about power. I mean, I work in IP and I teach IP, and this is serious. This is serious. So anyway, I'll pass the mic, but I'll come back to it. I can talk about IP all day long, and empowerment that's what I'm all about. Thank you.
Derek, good luck.
Hello all. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm happy you welcome me here to speak to you guys. My name is Derek Bowes. I'm the owner of Harnetail Innovations. It's a different company that I'm building right here. This company is, I like to call it a metaphysical company. Some people understand when I say metaphysical, it's about turning thoughts into things. So often in the IP world, people think that one invention was invented by one person. A lot of times, a lot of inventions are invented by multiple people at the same time. And that's because, in our view, in my company's view, we feel like we're all connected. We're all connected through an ether, where you can feel things, you can feel people through your antenna, if you will. If you're sitting at a stoplight and somebody pulls up beside you and starts staring at you, you will feel that. You'll feel that across the room. Many times people picked up the telephone and they felt a certain rush and there was a bad thing on the other end of that phone. These things you can feel. My company is using intellectual property. We're trying to connect with ideas that's out there but has not been come about yet. And we're using metaphysics to get that done. There's a combination of metaphysical and staffing company. Because in the DC area, you have a lot of law firms, intellectual property law firms, and they don't have proper staffing. They're desperate for staffing. And a lot of young black high school graduates, college graduates they might become paralegals, but they're not becoming IP paralegals. So the combination of metaphysical and staffing is what my company is about. And hopefully it'll take off real soon.
Ernest.
Hi guys, how you guys doing today? First teacher, thank you. Caleb, thank you for inviting me here. I'm also a Howard grad, class of 2010. Hi, Jesse. I'm on the regulatory standpoint, so I've been doing it for the last 10 years. I've worked traditional banking, and I've moved over to the crypto space. So I'm right now at Coinbase doing all KYC onboarding. I've also been able to educate, start building DAOs with Caleb. And I'm here today just to talk to you guys about my understanding with IP laws in regards to the regulatory standpoint of with the Web3 and the NFT space, which is very, very ambiguous, but also it's growing, and we need to educate ourselves and have an understanding of what it is, because at this point, it's not regulatory, not regulated. there's a lot to it. So I'm going to be here to talk to you guys today about it.
All right, my first question to the panel is, how does Web3 upset the IP sector? I think many people are under the impression that blockchain makes IP registrations obsolete. Maybe that's a myth, maybe it's true. I mean, what is your viewpoint in terms of Web3 and its impact on intellectual property?
All right, I'll start. So, I mean, every new technology, I mean, so the patent office is, I mean, we talked about it this morning. I mean, it's the foundation for, you know, a lot of commerce, not all commerce, but it's for a lot of commerce. So people, I got some stats on my computer, I was looking earlier. People, I think there's about 7,000 or 8,000 patents that have been granted already just with blockchain in the title. So people, even though people think that blockchain and Web3 can go beyond the patent office, and I'll talk about that in a minute, people are still registering their intellectual property with the patent office because the patent office gives you a federal right, federal protection of your property. That's what the patent office gives you. And so with, you know, with blockchain, if you were just to register your property, you know, on a blockchain, you can certainly determine who invented something first. And I think that's what people like about the blockchain is it says immutable, you know, ledger. But I don't know if there's an enforcement arm. I mean, like the smart contracts, the NFTs are written in, they're coded. I mean, an NFT as a smart contract, it's a perfect license. If you can figure out how to get your digital asset into an NFT, a smart contract, fantastic. You get your royalty right there, and that's a great way, and that certainly supersedes the written contract and having to track somebody down for royalties, so that's great. But in terms of the enforcement part, for like a patent or a trademark, I don't know if blockchains have that, whether you can take that and go to court, because the federal government sets up the patent system and the trademark system to be able to go to court. So they work together in some ways, and they're separate in other ways. But I don't think I don't think we'll ever replace the patent system. There's too many people invested in it, and the laws of the US are invested in it. But it's a very interesting topic.
Well, just to piggyback what Jesse was saying, without IP laws with regards to the Web3 space, there's no way to regulate, there's no way to show what's going on with like specifically your NFTs, because you need to have that type of understanding, that regulation where there's laws into it. Because if I have an NFT, he has an NFT, and there's no patent laws, people can just take it. That's where the theft comes in, the regulation standpoint of like, how are we doing this? Like, where is it going towards? So just to piggyback on your side, that's what I'm gonna go with there.
Yeah, I have not much to add to that because Jesse said pretty much the whole thing, that the patent office is not going to be replaced by Web3, not even a little bit.
How can decentralization coexist with, you know, protecting people's patents? Because we've already had cases in which, you know, the mainstream industry, they came out with all these daggone apes, and then other people copied the apes, and these people copied the apes. I mean, it's become the World Wide West. So is it possible to be an advocate of decentralization and also an advocate of the necessity of registering IPs? And can those two coexist? Because they seem like they're a bit counter to one another.
I believe so, in a way where if you look in, like, for instance, I know Seth Green, he had his NFT, his board ape stolen, and to get that back went through a whole mess of like regulatory aspects. So that IP project, there has to be code, there has to be that. You need the IPs, you need it to be coded with the NFT space, with the Web3, because if you don't have it, there's a lot of infight, a lot of still like hacking and theft. So you will need that.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, with NFTs and with, you know, decentralization, so you could have, you know, and I think the people in this space know you have different communities, you know, who are setting up different programs and different systems. And so at some point there has to be some trust. If you were going to do it outside of the PTO, there has to be some trust within the systems, within these communities, that people, like somebody told me you could sell an NFT on like OpenSea, but then you could also sell the same one somewhere else. So ideally you're trying to say, if you sell on OpenSea, that this is the only copy of this ever, but there's no real regulation that you couldn't sell it on some other platform. So you could have decentralization, but you would need some sort of trust. And I don't know if that's out there with this, you know, the monetary system, but I'm sure there is ways to set up different communities and protect your ideas within those communities. I mean, this is the old bartering system. I mean, NFTs and blockchain, this is the old bartering system that people were talking about in the 1970s. Let's get away from the US dollar and let's just trade services. So I think it's possible to do. You just have to have trust between people, and maybe that's what people are setting up with different blockchain communities. So I think it's possible.
I think that maybe you can shed some light on maybe some interactions you've had of the corporate world and their concern regarding Web3 and IP, and I'll give you a scenario. You know, people are used to virtual reality type gaming produced by a corporation, and then, or you know, old social media, AOL, etc. But the promise of the metaverse, which we'll talk about more later, but the promise of the metaverse is that it becomes an environment where you interact with people's brands and you mix it up a bit. So, you know, hypothetically, you could, you know, go and buy a piece of a Lamborghini and smash it up with a Ford, and then maybe it becomes popular and sells it. And so have you had any conversations in your professional lives with the brands that we know being concerned, or are they excited about the potential of this kind of user-created environment that's going to occur with the commerce that comes with it? I know it's like a multifaceted question, but it's just some things I've been thinking about. The gaming space that we know of are really centralized. You know, you go into this brand's games or this brand series of games, but we're talking about things and people mashing things together, because you can technically, you know, if somebody creates a mergeable NFT, and it happens to be mergeable with someone else's brands, and then that individual that owns the merged thing together, and they start selling it, what are the ramifications? I'm just curious. I want to eavesdrop on some of the conversations that you might be having with others. That's what I'm asking. If that makes sense.
All right, so yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world of business, and I think it mixes the new with the old. Somebody sent me an email. I got an email just a couple days ago that said like Nike has the most NFT sales of all the NFTs. I don't know. It was just an email that I got. So it's the old world plus the new. I mean, people are in the metaverse, but they're selling land, quote unquote land, in metaverses. Which kind of copies the theoretical sale of real estate. So even though it's a metaverse and it's new, it's still copying like the old law of real estate. It's getting a piece of property and buying it, and then hoping it becomes valuable. So it's an old plus a new. I don't think it replaces the patent system, but it certainly goes beyond it. But the major companies are filing for patents, and the major companies are filing for trademarks in this space. And so, I mean, that's something that, one of my education companies, which we focus on, is kind of just teaching these things. So you can't go beyond, you can't skip over what's already there. Like even in the movie The Matrix, they had to plug back into the Matrix to do work. They were outside of the Matrix, but they had to go into the Matrix, and they had to simulate the Matrix to do work. So you can't totally leave the Matrix. You can't be. I mean, you can try to be in the real world, but you got to be in both.
Ernest, your thoughts? What have you heard? Concerns, excitement.
I mean, with the metaverse, there's always a chance of, as I said, theft. It's the Wild Wild West right now. You're going into a new space where it's in infancy, so there's so many different things that you're not going to see understanding. And like Jesse said, like it's going back to the old is always going to be here. You're always going to, at some point, it will come back into the full circle. So I don't see anything really changing. I feel like there's be new things, but I don't see it as in a way where it won't go back to the old guard. There's always going to be that aspect that we're going to need.
Yeah, I totally agree. With this new world right there that we're talking about, this would be very difficult. You talk about what people are worried about. They're worried about security a lot, losing their intellectual property through the different forms. So that's the biggest thing I'm heard about as far as the metaverse, the security aspect.
And it's still brand awareness. Even if you're in a metaverse, you still have a product that you're trying to sell. So even if you don't register it with the PTO, you're still, the pitch competitions and all of us out here, you're still selling your brand, and it's still, even if it's a common law trademark, you still want people to recognize who you are and what you're doing. So you're still always branding yourself, even if you don't get the formal IP. If it's a trade secret, if you keep your information secret, it's still going to always be governed by that still base layer of society that we've always known. I guess that's what I said before. Yeah.
When it comes to what excites you about the space, do you see any laws changing that specifically relate to Web3? I mean, what is something that you're like, oh man, when we get to this point, this is really going to change or be a game changer?
Well, there was a copyright case that came out about a year and a half ago through the Supreme Court, and it actually made it easier to copy. It actually weakened the copyright laws, and it actually, I think, it will encourage NFTs, because when NFTs first came out, they were copying people's art, and people were getting really upset that their art was getting, copied, and people were selling it. And then this case came through the Supreme Court where it actually makes it easier to copy. So that's, for the NFT community, it's actually better that you can have less, court enforcement of these derivative drawings and so on. But what's fantastic is just hearing some people talk today. I mean, the level of technology. I mean, I talked to a few people today. I didn't know what they were talking about. I was just trying to hold on for dear life. I was like, what are they? Just to try to figure out what they were saying. So that's the fantastic part about it. But I look at the Black empowerment piece and how we're using this. It's not just about making money. It's about supporting Black business and Black content and all different things. So it's fantastic that people are doing this. But it's all at different levels. It's not just the most high tech. It's Web 2 and Web 1. We still we didn't win Web 2 or one or two, or I don't know if we're going to win Web 3. We still got to work on all three levels.
Ernest?
I was going to say, well, in that aspect, what you're saying, the biggest thing that I'm getting from this, and the most exciting part, is the growth opportunity. It's in its infancy, so we're able to build our own wealth, build our own networks. There's a look in intellectual property, like you say. It's easier for copy, be able to show your product. It's in a way, we are here in the forefront to be able to build what we want as a group, as a Black community. And I think a lot of times we don't speak about it. And today we have an opportunity for us to build that up.
Right, and the most exciting thing for me is just the autonomy of it, where so long we have the big government controlling every aspect of our lives. But once we get to decentralized crypto, we can spread out and do what we want to do. We can be our own people.
Have there been any cases yet of, we always talk about how people without means or Black people without as much money have had their IP taken by major brands and having that exploded. Have there been any challenges made by individuals who have minted something to the blockchain? I'm not just an NFT in which they're trying to now reverse challenge something that may have be grown by someone else, a major brand, or that hasn't come to pass yet?
I haven't seen it as of yet.
Me neither.
I mean, I don't have any specific examples, but I do know that small businesses do tend to put their ideas out there. I mean, people who are, anybody here, you're trying to get your business heard. You're trying to get, your voice heard. So people just naturally tell their ideas, and everybody does that. So, I mean, there's no foolproof way of not getting your ideas taken from, some version of your idea. It's just part of business. I mean, copying is part of human nature. You see somebody with a hat that you like, you go out and get a hat like that. So if you see somebody in business, I mean, so copying is natural. The patent system tries to have some guidelines, but everybody's going to have something from them taken at some point. That's a natural part of business. So,
because I bring it up because I know there is a situation of someone from within our community who's not at this particular conference, but Cass Patterson was the first to mint sneaker NFTs and actually had the computer code was on GitHub, and it precedes when Nike started to do its thing. I mean, but this is you're not talking about somebody that has the funds to say, a certain VC was at my pitch deck competition, and all of a sudden they magically came out with the exact same thing and branded and advertised and had celebrity athletes. But she does have that evidence of the fact that her GitHub, printing date, like it wasn't a blockchain thing, but the programming there does predate anything, anytime they were mentioning it. But again, you're talking about funds. Who has the funds to pursue or to acquire that, or do you just cut your losses and move on? So that's why I was trying to say that any instance of using the blockchain of a smaller person and say, look, it's verifiable, it's there, it's not me copying from the major brands, and I can show the record of me going to all these different things. When you talk about sharing your plans, sometimes to get money, you got to share everything, and your uncle and your mother to boot. So it's kind of like I'm kind of exploring that idea of people, you know, using the blockchain in that fashion to protect themselves, or do we still really need to concentrate on government, which is more centralized registration?
Oh yeah, I was going to say something until you said that last piece, right? The blockchain certainly proves that you had something first. That's why I said in my initial comment about enforcement. But there's no way to prevent yourself. I mean, like I said, the early NFT people's drawings just got taken, you know, so there's no foolproof way of not getting taken advantage of in this world. You do as much as you can to protect yourself. You know, you fight as best you can. Sometimes you win. Hopefully you win most of the times, but you're not going to win them all. So it's definitely going to happen, you know.
I mean, in an aspect, smart contracts do help in a way to help with your NFTs, but at the same time, like you said, it's like there's no foolproof way of seeing your product doesn't get taken away. So in itself, it's just figuring it out. No, there's no real answer to it at this moment.
But smart contracts are nice though. If you can get yourself into a smart contract, then yeah, that's a good way.
Like I said, nothing's really regulated. It's like it's the Wild Wild West right now. We're still, it's in the infancy. You're still building it up. We don't know where it's going to go. Like within the Web3 space, we see what's going on. NFTs, Bitcoin, the crypto side is just it's a big factor where we're going to see what's going to happen.
And I have a client who has an NFT collection, and it's the same name as a popular hip hop artist, you know, from back in the day. And he knew that, and he derived his name from the hip hop artist, and he put his collection out there. He got a letter from the hip hop artist kind of representation, but he knew they wanted to do NFTs, but he knew he started his NFT project first, and he was like, no, let's file it. I want to get the trademark for that. So we filed like this group of trademarks, and after we filed, we got the letter again. And they threatened him, like a cease and desist letter. They threatened to take him to court. So, but he's plowing ahead. He thinks it's his property. He developed his whole collection. And so it hasn't gone to court yet, but we'll see.
It sort of is a different category. I mean, it's named after it, but it's not the artists themselves, is it? Or is it? No. So it's just the name that's the same.
Yeah.
But it's a different
But he got the name from the artist, you know. But he doesn't. He says it has a different meaning, but it's, you know. But he was in the marketplace with his NFTs before they were, and so he's a little guy. They're a big guy. We'll see what happens, you know. So I'll give you an update next year.
Yeah, definitely got an update next year. Any message you get is still a little bit of Wild Wild West. We probably still should rely on the traditional systems for now, but who knows what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 5 years. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jesse, Derek, and Ernest. Give them a round of applause.